I'm going to continue my unboxing of the big package from DVG. I'll put a link to it in the description so you can not miss a beat and follow where I'm coming from. But this is the new release in the Leader series from Dan Verssen Games, or DVG, Spruance Leader, which is the base game, and it has 3 expansions. I'll get to the expansions, but I thought I would start the unboxing with the base game. Isn't that a good place to start? Spruance Leader is the Cold War Fleet Combat Solitaire Strategy game from Dan Verssen Games, or DVG. Copyright 2022. This just came out, hot off the presses. Let's take a look at the back of the box here, and it is, I can attest, it is a heavy box. There's a lot of stuff in here, and this is part of the Leader series, but it's a little bit different than the other Leader games I have. I have Phantom Leader, which is air combat or controlling air missions over Korea, or Vietnam, I should say, Vietnam, and Zero Leader, which is World War II in the Pacific, where you're take the role of the Japanese. And those are kind of your standard, or similar. A lot of Leader games were kind of similar, but where you have a center location where the target goes, and then you plan your approach to the target. You conduct combat or try to avoid surface to air type of missiles and artillery and the like, and then you manage your pilots. Your pilots it's kind of a little bit of a campaign game. Your pilots get more experience, and and they get stress, and they can't go on all the missions, and you can do a series of different campaigns over time. And then the big part about that is kind of the build out. You get to arm your planes with different armaments and bombs and what have you to accomplish the mission. This doesn't look like that. This looks like you're managing a task force. So the center of the board is really going to be the task force, and then the missions are going to be engaging the enemy, whether it's an enemy ship or enemy sub here, and the like. And so it's a little bit different in the Leader system. It's designed by I believe it's designed by the person that did the B-17 Leader for DVG, which is, and I don't have that, but that is, I think, different than the standard Air Leader series. It's bombing runs, and I don't know if there's any similarity between that and this, given it's the same designer. But there are some aspects of this that are reminiscent of some of the Leader concepts, the way combat's done and the like. But and there's stress in this as well. But it's a little bit different perspective than the standard Leader series. A Spruance Leader places you in command of the Naval Task Force during the Cold War. So this is kind of alt history. We're going back to the 80s. Hey, let's go back to the 80s. Executing missions to deter or win a war with the Soviets. Assemble the appropriate ships and attack targets. Defend task force from Soviet submarines, naval ships, and aircraft. Leverage your commander's skill to best support your mission. Spruance Leader is a solitaire game. Okay. Spruance Leader is a solitaire game. You command the NATO and Allied forces and make historically accurate decisions, while the built-in game system generates the battles and controls the opposing forces. This means you can play the game at your own pace, whenever and wherever you choose. Dean Brown game design, and I believe he's the designer of the B-17 Leader series. So here's what's in the box, but let's get in the box and see what is actually in this box here. This is a huge box, very thick. And DVG is, they don't skimp on the components, that's for sure. You get a lot in the box. And, they're primarily a solitaire game company. They do have multiplayer games, but they're kind of own this solitaire space. Their games have a solitaire focus. They're all about, solitaire play, and giving you some sim value, but a game, you know, something that's interesting and makes decisions. So decent sized box. I mean, it's a thick box. It's not super thick, but hopefully thick enough to hold up against the stress of coming on and off my shelf. Here is the rule book, and it is full color, glossy, in typical DVG fashion. It looks like 50 pages. 50 pages, but it looks like there's some examples. So that's examples of play on the from page 47. And so about 46 pages of actual rules. Now, DVG lays out their stuff a little bit different. They kind of break it down in parts, and kind of as you go through all the different aspects of the game. You know, Warfighter's kind of game I'm very familiar with is kind of broken down that way. Sometimes I find that their rule book's a little hard to get into. All the stuff's there, but sometimes I have a hard time kind of following it. Like, here's the component descriptions. This is all good, right? We need to have that. Here's that tactical display I was talking about where you're kind of the center of the action. Description of the ship cards, commander cards, target cards, and counter deck. But sometimes when they're explaining stuff, like the different components, they're kind of giving you some of the rules too. And it's not necessarily all laid out in one spot. So sometimes when you're going back and I know I saw that rule somewhere, and it might be in one of these other sections. Now, I haven't read this rule book yet, so that might be different here. Here's your sensor performance cards. There's a little bit of complexity into this game, it looks like here. Weapon counter ordnance. Now, this looks somewhat familiar to if you're anybody who's familiar with the Leader series, or the air combat Leader series, this looks somewhat familiar there. And the games, the combat in these games are not necessarily that complicated. You're rolling a 10-sided dice, and you're trying to hit a number. So it's not that complicated, but but depending on what the kind of weapon it is, it might be able to be used at different, you know, altitudes or at different type of targets and stuff like that. So there is some nuance to all that. Here's event cards, enemy damage. Boy, look at that. I think we need a close-up of that. There's a lot of information there. You got the type, missile defense, ground attack, tactical display attack, squadron strength, air attack number and die number, ground attack number and die number, and return to base. Quite a bit of stuff on one counter there. It's a task force ship action, so this is your part of the game. You're the task force, so you're going to be probably living a lot in this space here. And then we get into commander actions here, helicopter actions, campaign start. So you can do campaigns in here. Then you have your sequence of play. So, and I imagine there's probably something on the board as well on the sequence of play. DVG is really good at that. And most solitaire games have a very set sequence of what you do and what the AI does, and so very important to have that ready at hand. And it's usually, DVG usually puts it on the boards as well, but you have it here. Here's mission setup for the individual, and this has, like the other Leader series, you're gonna have individual missions, and then you can probably string those together for the campaign, I would imagine. Mission execution phase. So there's not a lot there, but there's your mission execution phase. Enemy TF engagement phase. So TF, task force engagement phase. And you've got color examples of stuff and talking about which counters you need to be pulling out in certain circumstances. Dual column, print's not super large. There's also some red print that are like notes or examples throughout this. And then air enemy engagement phase. Man, I'm just amazed how much information's on a counter there. Mission debriefing, campaign evaluation, optional rules. So actually 41 pages of rules if you don't want to get into the optional stuff. Ship's ordnance. And I imagine the expansions are going to get into even more stuff, but that's not what we're doing today. Destroyers, frigates, surface to subsurface. Here's all your different kind of ordnance here, surface to surface. And then we get into the examples of play. So that's the rule book. Somewhat of a page through there just to get a feel for it. Here is your board. Let's pull that out there. A little bit of string on that. Let's see what we got here. Here's the board that you'll be playing on. Mounted board here. I'm getting some glare there. Sorry about that. So your forces will be here. Your ships and the task force will be going here. You've got a screening force, main force, supported and protected force, slow versus fast ships. You might remember that from some of the air games of slow and fast planes. And then some modifiers on here. Then you're going to have your engagement sequence, your engagement complete, battle turns, and this is all the engagement sequence here. Then we also have some enemy charts up here. And then you have, looks like you have some modifiers here on this board. This is where the enemy is going to be laying at. So different perspective than the other, than some of the other leader games. You get encounter cards, enemy sub cards, and enemy ship cards right there. So pretty cool, pretty cool. Let's keep on getting into the box here. Oh, still heavy, even after I got stuff off. Here's your Spruance leader task force log, so you can keep track of, you know, your SO points and target SO points, and that's how, you know, that's kind of your build out on how you use some of this stuff. Commander and ships, target, so kind of keep track of that log. I usually make a copy of this. I imagine you can probably download this from DVG as well. Here is actions. So there's a little bit of player aid, basic campaign sequence of play, and then some actions here. A regular paper, but it is color. Then we're going to get into some of the missions here, or scenarios, whatever you want to call them. And wow, they're one-sided. Of course, that's okay because you're going to be laying them on the board to keep track of stuff. But quite a few in here. I think there's like 11, I think. So North Atlantic skirmishes, 1988. North Atlantic sea lanes, 1988. Invasion of Hokkaido, Cold War. Linked Atlantic campaign. So this is to link some of these Atlantic scenarios together. So you got a way to do that. And if you look at this, it tells a little bit about it. Like here's the overview, and this is going to determine your events, like in the other leader games. You'll draw an event, and the number will correspond to one of these numbers, and that's going to tell you, you know, kind of what you're going to encounter. So like if you're going out for, you're starting here, if you're going out to here, this is your enemy task force or what you're encountering. So the further out you go, it's going to be tougher stuff or more stuff you have to cover because you're covering more territory usually. You can do a short campaign or a medium campaign here, and what that involves as far as targets and the victory point, how you do. Again, this is a solitaire game because you're going up against, you're measuring yourself up against kind of these scales, whether you do a short or medium. You got skill levels. You got your task force chart here and activity chart here. Let's continue on with some of these. You got Hold the Line 1983. Mediterranean 1988. More Atlantic. Indonesia. Wow, Destroy the Kirav. This is a little special scenario here. Looks like a game of Battleship. Escape and evade. Again, this is in the Pacific there. Falkland Islands War. Look at that, 1982. That's pretty cool. Okay, so you can go back to the historical scenario there. Then you get several sheets of counters. The rest of these are all counters if you look there. Let's turn it this way here. And the thing I like about DVG counters are they're kind of pre-rounded. I mean, you really don't, they're so thick. I don't know if you really want to clip these anyway. Plus, I'm not a big clipper. I clip some stuff, but that's mostly like decision game type stuff. These come out pretty clean, so usually don't have to clip these. Good size counter, look at that. I told you there's a lot of information on the counter, but it's a good size counter. So that's how they get all that information on there. Then you also have the back side, they're dual-sided. So this is our armaments or ordnance, and then you've got some of the ships here and some of the enemies here. And there's several of these. This is sheet 2. Sheet 3. And you get some administrative counters here as well. Here's troops, tanker, minesweeper. You got some different nationalities there. Kind of cool. A lot of information on here. These are probably some of the markers that go on the board, I would imagine, or that you might pull these out of the cup. Normally there's like a chit pull to see what your enemies that you're facing. So I wonder if they're doing the same thing in this game. Here's some of how you detect. So there's going to be a certain manner of searching out stuff or trying to locate stuff. The targets, I imagine. They get some blank counters. Oh, geez. Boy, see, I tell you, they come out pretty easy, huh? Just a touch of the finger and it popped right out there. This is sheet 6. More enemies, more ordnance, and again, I wonder if those are ones that are going to go into a container. Sheet 7, and these might be like the enemy damage counters that you put on. So this is going to, after you do an attack on them, this is going to tell you what the effect is for certain of their characteristics. Tools, double-sided, of course. Then even some more. It's got some blank counters on there. And that's the catch. So you got 8 of these. That's quite a bit. Then we got a die, 10-sided die there. And then we get a lot of cards. So see what we got going on with the cards here. I'll kind of get these little pre-open here so I can get into them with you. I'm sorry if I'm going over too much on this one, but there's a lot in this box. You just got to see it all, right? So let's start with the target cards. So this is going to correspond to one of those missions or scenarios or whatever they're called. That number on there. And DVG cards are decent. They're all, I just find that they're generally the same kind of quality. They're not super thin. These feel a little bit thinner than normal. Sometimes there's a little bit more of a stiffness to them. So these are a little bit thinner than I remember. So these are all target cards there. Let's get through the target cards and see what we got. This is all. Then we got into target card, enemy ship card. And I imagine that's going to have quite a bit of information on it. Sensor performance cards. Again, this is a naval game on the high sea, so there's a lot of stuff to search. Enemy sub cards. Okay, good. And then we got more of those here, so I imagine this deck's going to continue on where that one left off. Got a lot of trash to clean up in here. So let's get enemies. Oh, that's more enemy ship cards. So enemy sub, then more enemy ship cards. This is special mission only. So, so there's a little bit of distinction between some of these cards here. Quite a bit in there. Then we got some encounter cards here. And then we get into some dual-sided cards here. So it looks like this is a commander card. Young from the UK. He's warrior status. So just like the pilots in some of the general leader games, you know, you start off like green and then work your way up. So you got young can start off as green, and then, well, it might be on the back here. Newbie, green, average, skilled, veteran, and warrior. So that's, you want to get them up to warrior. So these commanders are going to, you kind of, I guess, level up your commanders based on, you know, how they do in some of these scenarios or missions. So that's instead of the pilots, which are what I'm most familiar with, at least with Fandom and Zero Leader. Now you've got commanders here. So I'll put this down here. Imagine that goes there. Yeah. You got some event cards. We'll take a look at the front of these. Remind me, like you guys can. Event cards, support ship, all kinds of different decks here. Helicopter, drone. Drones in the 80s? What kind of drones those are? Those more helicopters. So let's put those together. I don't know if they necessarily go separate out or not. Then you got some the ships here. And looks like the ships you advance up, kind of like what you did with the pilots and the different airplanes in the other Leader series. You're going to do that with some of the ships here. Because there's like a warrior there, skilled, veteran, and then G is green, and N is newbie. So you have all these different, so there's quite a lot of cards, but sometimes it's one ship. So one ship's going to get 3 cards to have to count for the 6 different levels that ship can be at. And it will get better, you know, then the warrior is going to be better than, you know, the other ones. And they have stuff like detect and attack on there. Then you got a stress level, again, just like with the pilots in the previous Leader series. You got a stress level, whether they're okay or shaken. Then this maybe has a helicopter on it. And it's got some other modifiers and stuff. Looks like it's oil, so it's oil-based. And this 1969 Pacific, so I guess this is something that it was located in the Pacific, maybe. It's only can play in those, be in those scenarios. Anyway, a lot of stuff for me to read up on in this game, but there's quite a few cards in here, and there's different nationalities. That's U.S., there's Canada, you know, there's France, there's UK. So you got all kinds of different cards and nationalities in here, a lot of different ships and stuff. So put those there. And let's look at some of these here. So a lot in this game. Kind of excited to get into it. Wonder if this was the last one on this was the cook. Yeah, so this will go on the bottom there. So these are all the different cards that and then the expansions are going to add. They're going to add more ships and carriers and subs and the whole like. So, but as I said, there's usually 3 cards to a ship. There's the good old Iowa. Look at that thing. So I don't know what these columns stand for, but it doesn't have any detect or attack on this level. Oh, there, you can barely see it there if you look closely. So you can see ship, sub, and air. So you've got the surface ships. This is what detect and attack is. The submarine detect and attack, and the air detect and attack. Okay, barely should see that on there. All these are oil because it's in the 80s. I wonder if you eventually get to nuclear at some point on some of these cards. Anyway, so there's a lot of your ships there. Now let's look at some of the enemy ship cards here. Here's your enemy ship cards, and they're going to have those same designations for ship, sub, and air. You also have a time period, I guess, when it was available or when it was commissioned, maybe. And they're not going to have 3 levels because they're not. They don't get to advance. They don't get to level up like you do. So there's some of the enemy ships. Here's some, and they got more enemy ships here. Here's an aircraft carrier. So you got a lot of different stuff to go after, right? Then you also have some subs here as well. All the different kind of subs you're going to be able to go up against. It's pretty cool. And then you got your target cards here. So this will set up the mission. So this number here will correspond with, oh man, it's so much stuff on here. It's kind of shaky. Let's put this over here. So like on this here, there's not a 1 on here, but the number in here is going to correspond with the number here, and this will be the target for certain that you're really trying to go after on certain things. I imagine that's how it is. So these allied convoys are going to be just probably maybe running support or cover for a convoy. And then these other ones are going after stuff, like an enemy wolf pack. So here's an enemy armed merchant, 29. So that would correspond with this 29 right here. And that's what you're going up against. What the victory points are, and what's gonna potentially, I guess, be in the enemy cup that you draw from. I assume that you're drawing from a cup. That's kind of how the other leaders worked. There's an enemy naval base, so all kinds of different targets there. Then you have these encounters. Activity level, high, low, none. Air defense. So this is your intel. It's kind of interesting here. Don't know how these work, so I need to read up on this. Kind of cool, though. So I don't know how those encounters work. And then you got these blue cards here. Here's your sensory performance cards. Something more I need to read up on. So we're trying to detect submarines, it looks like here. And there's a weather modifier here as well. Okay, that's cool. All right, let's look at some of this stuff over here. These are events. Engine trouble, commander kill check. That's not good. Bad weather stress. So these are all kind of random events that could mess with your well-laid plans. Support ship here. Might get some new ammo or more ammo for your stuff. And then you got helicopters. Gotta have some helicopters and some drones. Look at that. And they have nationalities as well. So they're only detecting ships and subs, it looks like, on there. Anyway, well, there you have it. That is, I went a long time on this, but there's a lot in this game. This is what you get in a box of Spruance Leader. If you've ordered it, you should be getting it right now. If you haven't, you might want to think about getting this because there's a lot here. If you like the Leader series, this is probably a no-brainer. If you like Solitaire games, again, probably a no-brainer. If you like hypothetical or alt history, going back to the 80s, Back to the Future, so to speak, and playing out Cold War scenarios on the ocean or the seas all over the world. It looks like there's several scenarios there, and I imagine the expansions get into more. Then this is again probably a no-brainer. And this is a little bit different, it looks like, than the standard Leader series. The best I can tell here, there's a lot of new stuff here and a different way of looking at it and a different perspective on this. So that should be interesting getting into this. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. I want to thank DVG for sending this. Greatly appreciate this. This is awesome. And I've got more unboxings or unbaggings. I got unbaggings left. The expansions come in bags. So I've got some more of that to do. And then I gotta get this to the table. I gotta play this, guys and gals. I gotta get this to the table. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Sorry for the long video, but there was so much in this box that I thought it would be worth for you all taking a look at it. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks to DVG. Thanks, Dennis. You know who you are. And hey, take care. Thanks for watching.